Have you ever been told a story so many times that you stopped questioning it? A story so familiar, so deeply ingrained in your mind that you assumed it must be true, without ever pausing to examine its origins or the layers of interpretation that shaped it over centuries. For thousands of years, across cultures and continents, humanity has turned to ancient texts like the Book of Genesis to understand our beginnings, our identities, and our place in the cosmos. One of the most enduring tales from this sacred narrative is the creation of Eve, the first woman supposedly fashioned from Adam's rib, a single bone taken from his side while he slept, molded by divine hands into a companion. This image has permeated art, literature, theology, and even popular culture. You've seen it depicted in Renaissance paintings by masters like Michelangelo on the Sistine Chapel ceiling, where Eve emerges gracefully from Adam's body. You've heard it echoed in sermons, taught in religious schools, and illustrated in countless children's books, often portraying woman as a secondary creation, an afterthought derived from man. But what if this familiar story, this cornerstone of Judeo-Christian tradition, is not quite what the ancient Hebrew text intended? What if the word translated as rib for millennia was never meant to signify a mere bone at all? What if, buried beneath layers of translation errors, cultural biases, and patriarchal influences, lies a more profound, egalitarian truth, one that redefines the creation of woman not as subordination, but as partnership and equality? In this documentary, we embark on a journey through history, linguistics, theology, and archaeology to uncover the hidden meanings in Genesis. We'll peel back the veils of time, examining how ancient scribes, translators, and scholars interpreted these verses, and how those interpretations have shaped societies, gender roles, and religious doctrines for over 3,000 years. This is not just a retelling of a Bible story, it's an exploration of how mistranslations can alter the course of human thought, empowering some while marginalizing others. Stay with us as we delve into the original Hebrew, consult ancient manuscripts, and trace the evolution of this narrative from the dusty scrolls of antiquity to the digital debates of today. By the end, you may never view the story of Adam and Eve the same way again. Let us begin at the source, the book of Genesis itself, the first book of the Hebrew Bible, also known as the Torah or the Pentateuch, traditionally attributed to Moses around the 13th century BCE, though modern scholars debate its composition, suggesting it was compiled from multiple sources between the 10th and 5th centuries BCE during the Babylonian exile. Genesis chapters 1 and 2 describe the creation of the world and humanity in poetic, mythological language that draws from ancient Near Eastern traditions, such as Mesopotamian epics like the Enuma Elish, where gods battle chaos to form order. In Genesis 2:21-22, the King James Version, published in 1611 CE, and one of the most influential English translations, reads, "And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs, and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib, which the Lord God had taken from man, made he a woman, and brought her unto the man." This translation, elegant and rhythmic, has captivated readers for centuries, but it hinges on a single Hebrew word, Tsela, rendered here as rib. To understand why this might be a mistranslation, we must immerse ourselves in the linguistic world of ancient Hebrew, a Semitic language spoken by the Israelites from around 1200 BCE onward, evolving through biblical, Mishnaic, and modern forms. Hebrew words often carry multiple meanings, influenced by context, root derivations, and poetic usage. Tsela appears over 40 times in the Old Testament, and in nearly every instance outside of Genesis 2, it does not mean rib as in a skeletal bone. Instead, it consistently translates to side, Chamber, flank, or panel. Structural elements implying wholeness, support, or division rather than a fragile, isolated part. Consider the historical context of these usages. In Exodus 25:12, dating to the Mosaic era around 1446 BCE, according to traditional timelines, God instructs Moses on building the Ark of the Covenant, a sacred chest symbolizing divine presence among the Israelites during their wilderness wanderings. The verse commands, "And thou shalt cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put them in the 4 corners thereof, and 2 rings shall be in the one side, Tsela of it, and 2 rings in the other side, Tsela of it." Here, Tsela refers to the broad sides of the ark, not ribs, evoking sturdy, integral parts of a holy structure carried by priests through deserts and battles, a symbol of covenant that would later reside in the tabernacle and Solomon's temple. Fast forward to the United Monarchy period, around 1000 BCE, when King Solomon, son of David and renowned for his wisdom and wealth, constructed the first temple in Jerusalem, a monumental project that drew laborers from across the region and incorporated Phoenician craftsmanship through alliances with King Hiram of Tyre. In 1 Kings 6:5-6, describing this architectural marvel, "And against the wall of the house he built chambers, Tsela, round about. Against the walls of the house round about, both of the temple and of the oracle, and he made chambers, Tsela, round about." Again, Tsela denotes side chambers or supporting walls, annexes for storage, priestly duties and rituals, integral to the temple's function as the center of Israelite worship, where annual festivals like Passover drew pilgrims from afar, fostering national identity amid threats from Assyria and Egypt. Even in prophetic visions, such as those of Ezekiel around 593 BCE, during the Babylonian exile, when the prophet, a priest deported from Jerusalem, described a future idealized temple in Ezekiel 41:5-6. After he measured the wall of the house, 6 cubits, and the breadth of every side chamber, Tsela, 4 cubits round about the house on every side. These Tsela are architectural sides, evoking sacred halves or supporting elements in a visionary blueprint meant to inspire hope among exiles, reminding them of God's enduring presence despite the destruction of Solomon's temple in 586 BCE by Nebuchadnezzar II. So why in Genesis alone did Tsela become rib? The shift begins with ancient translations that bridged Hebrew to other languages, influencing how the story spread across empires. The Septuagint, or LXX, a Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, commissioned around 250 BCE in Alexandria, Egypt, under Ptolemy II. Philadelphus, for the Jewish diaspora in the Hellenistic world, used pleura for Tsela. Pleura can mean either side or rib, a dual ambiguity in Greek anatomy and architecture. This version, copied by scribes in monasteries and used by early Christians, including the Apostles, set a precedent. By the 4th century CE, Jerome's Latin Vulgate, completed around 405 CE in Bethlehem and Rome, adopted costa, which primarily means rib but can imply side or flank. Jerome, a scholar fluent in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, consulted rabbis and manuscripts, yet chose costa, perhaps influenced by Roman medical texts like those of Galen, who detailed human anatomy, or by emerging Christian doctrines emphasizing Eve's derivation from Adam to justify gender hierarchies. This choice resonated through the Middle Ages, when the Catholic Church, dominant in Europe, disseminated the Vulgate via illuminated manuscripts produced in scriptoria, like those at Cluny Abbey in France or Lindisfarne in England. By the time of the Renaissance, artists like Albrecht Dürer in his 1504 engraving Adam and Eve, or Masaccio in the Brancacci chapel frescoes around 1425, visualized Eve emerging from Adam's rib, reinforcing the narrative in visual culture that reached illiterate masses through church art. The Protestant Reformation in the 16th century, led by figures like Martin Luther, whose 1545 German Bible used rippe, rib, and the English translators under King James, perpetuated this amid debates over Scripture's authority against papal tradition. But Rabbinic Judaism, preserving Hebrew traditions, offers a different lens. In the Midrash Genesis Rabbah, compiled around 400–600 CE in Palestine by sages like Rabbi Oshaya, it interprets the first human as androgynous, a unified being with male and female aspects split into two. Drawing from Plato's Symposium, circa 385 BCE, where Aristophanes describes primordial humans as dual-faced spheres divided by Zeus, Jewish mystics in the Kabbalah, like the Zohar from 13th century Spain under Moses de Leon, saw Adam as containing both masculine and feminine divine sparks, separated to enable relational unity. This view influenced medieval Jewish communities in Europe, such as those in Worms or Toledo, where women like Eva of Würzburg in the 12th century participated in scholarly discussions, challenging Christian patriarchal norms. The implications of reinterpreting Tsela as side are profound, reshaping theology and society. If God divided Adam's side, essentially halving a unified human, it suggests equality, not hierarchy. Genesis 1:27 states, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them." This predates Eve's naming, implying an original duality. Ancient Near Eastern parallels, like the Sumerian myth of Enki and Ninhursag from 2000 BCE tablets found at Nippur, depict creation from earth-side or clay, emphasizing partnership in fertility cults. In historical terms, this egalitarian reading could have altered gender dynamics. In ancient Israel, women like Deborah, circa 1200 BCE, a judge and prophetess in the Book of Judges, led armies against Canaanites, reflecting matriarchal elements in tribal society before the monarchy centralized power under kings like Saul. Yet patriarchal structures emerged, influenced by Assyrian and Babylonian codes like Hammurabi's, 1750 BCE, which treated women as property. The Rib translation bolstered such views in Christianity. Augustine of Hippo, 354–430 BCE in The City of God, argued Eve's creation from Rib signified her subordinate role, impacting medieval canon law that barred women from priesthood. The fall in Genesis 3 further distorted this. Adam's blame, "The woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat," shifted from harmony to accusation, mirroring societal shifts. In the Roman Empire, where Christianity spread after Constantine's Edict of Milan in 313 CE, laws like the Theodosian Code, 438 CE, reinforced male dominance, echoing the curse. "Thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee." Yet Jesus in the New Testament reversed this. In John 4, his conversation with the Samaritan woman at the well around 30 CE broke taboos, making her an evangelist, influencing early Christian communities in Samaria. Expanding our scope, let's explore the pre-Adamite theories hinted in the text, suggesting a world before Genesis 1:3. This gap theory, popularized in the 19th century by Scottish theologian Thomas Chalmers in 1814, posits a cataclysm between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2, where the earth was without form and void. Tohu wabohu implies ruin, not initial creation. Ancient Sumerian texts like the Eridu Genesis, 1600 BCE, describe a primeval flood destroying earlier civilizations, paralleling biblical language used in Jeremiah 4:23 for judgment. Archaeological evidence from sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dating to 9600 BCE, reveals monumental pillars predating agriculture, suggesting advanced prehistoric societies. The sons of God in Job 38:7 and Genesis 6, interpreted as angels or watchers in the Book of Enoch, 300 BCE, a pseudepigraphal text found among Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran, 1947 discovery, describe fallen beings mingling with humans, producing Nephilim, giants whose legends appear in Greek mythology as titans, or in Norse sagas as Jotun. The flood narrative, around 2348 BCE per Ussher's chronology, 1650 CE, but archaeologically linked to Mesopotamian floods like the Shuruppak layer, 2900 BCE, served as purification. Noah's Ark, dimensions given in cubits, reflects Babylonian boat-building techniques. Post-flood, giants like Og of Bashan, 1400 BCE in Deuteronomy, suggest survival, influencing Canaanite epics. In modern times, feminist scholars like Phyllis Tribal in God and the Rhetoric of Sexuality, 1978, advocate the side interpretation, impacting gender equality movements. Debates in the 20th century, amid Vatican II, 1962-1965, and women's ordination in Protestant denominations, reflect this shift. As we conclude, the story of Adam and Eve, whether rib or side, pre-Adamite worlds or not, teaches us about interpretation's power. In a world still grappling with gender inequality, from the suffragette movements of the 1910s to Thou and Me Too in 2017, revisiting these texts offers liberation. What lessons do we carry forward? That truth evolves with understanding, that equality is divine design, and that questioning ingrained stories can lead to profound restoration. As societies advance, may we build bridges of mutuality, honoring the full image of humanity.